Thanks for being here. You could be anywhere and you chose to be here. This is Lily, and this is Affirming Self. Guys, I'm so excited to talk with you about this today because I think each of us needs to be reminded that you are more capable than you think. I'd like to ask you this question. What if the only thing standing between you and what you want is how you see yourself? That is such a loaded question because for me it changed my life and how I look at things. From the time I was little, I definitely wanted to be something to propel myself forward into whatever it is that I wanted to do. And I didn't really seem to care or acknowledge at different times what the cost might be. But here's the thing, that hasn't always been the case, because there came a point in time where I would stop myself. And I think there's this pattern as human beings that we cling on to, whether it's manufactured by our own thinking or perceptions of situations. There's common ways that we unintentionally, and maybe sometimes intentionally, we choose to shrink ourselves. Some of these things that come to mind are imposter syndrome, feel of failure, over-reliance on external validation, to just name a few. And I'd like to be clear that this is not a condemnation. This is recognizing that these are aspects of the underestimation pattern. We don't think we're good enough. We think we're not qualified enough. We are afraid of failure. And also, I think there's another piece of that we also may be afraid of success. What would happen if we actually succeeded? Would we actually like what we would see? And then the over reliance on external validation is a big one, because we so badly want to be liked, because we're social creatures and we've been socialized for so many years growing up that it's so important to be liked by our peers, family members, what have you. There are also times where we convince ourselves that we're not ready, we're not good enough, or we're not that kind of person. Something that I'm considering is, I'm reminded of my friend's podcast. He had released it. No, this wasn't a podcast. I'm reminded of a friend's YouTube video. He posted it probably by the time that this is being listened to, probably a week ago, maybe 2 weeks ago at this point. And he was discussing his journey with the 75 hard challenge. And he authentically spoke about the depths and the challenge that he faced with starting it multiple times over a span of a year and a month or something like that. And when he committed himself to it, he made the difference for himself. He proved it to himself that he could do it. And what I really appreciated about what he shared was it had to do a lot with the mindset that he had and how he subconsciously chose to self-sabotage his own success. And it's a really powerful reflection on his part and just how he walked through everything. And I feel that I have also done the same thing in different things. Just in terms of starting this podcast, I think it was a little bit over a year ago. Maybe it was a year and a half ago. I'd have to go back and look. I remember actually talking to the same friend about how we were exploring ourselves and things like that. When I talked with this friend, it was just over voice notes, and I asked him how his podcast was coming along. And he just flat out asked me, when are you starting yours? And I remember thinking to myself when he said that to me, I was like, I don't think that I'm doing that. And quite honestly, I didn't acknowledge it. In that moment, I realized when he asked me that, I didn't feel ready. I didn't feel good enough. I also kind of thought of myself as not that kind of person. And then here we are, a year or so, maybe 2 years later, when I actually allowed that word to percolate from him and to just kind of stick there, and here we are doing the thing. Maybe you've had something like that for you too. And it's not a podcast. Maybe it's starting to write that book. Maybe it's auditioning for that play. Maybe it is getting fit. Either way, we all experience moments where we convince ourselves that we're not ready, we're not good enough, we're not that kind of person. And honestly, there's a bunch of other ones I could speak to, but those ones seem to be the most present right now. And it's almost like we create these stories for ourselves of how we're not capable, because we like to keep ourselves safe. Our brain likes to keep us safe. That's kind of the whole point of having a brain, is to keep us safe. Survival mode. That's it. Survival mode. That's exactly what it is. We have allowed ourselves to take into that account, and we don't even realize it that we are. But that survival mode is what is running our lives, whether we want to acknowledge it or not. And really, these different stories that we're telling ourselves are really rooted in beliefs. And this can come from a number of different things. What I've found in my own personal development, it's usually something I've experienced in my childhood, some kind of a message I received, or some kind of societal narrative, or perceived failures and perfectionism. And what I mean about this kind of thing is that as we're growing up and we have socialization and we're experiencing all of that, we get these opportunities where we experience things like shame and guilt. Maybe we try our hardest to make the mark and we miss it somehow. Maybe you didn't shoot the winning basket like you meant to. Maybe it bounced off the rim. Maybe you worked really hard for getting a spelling test correct 100% and you end up failing. Maybe it's doing a whole dance routine in a way that you feel it should be done. With the example of the basketball thing, it might be that I'm not good enough at the sport to play this. Maybe it's with the test, I'm not smart enough. Or maybe it has to do with the dancing one. Maybe I'm not deserving or worthy of to be a dancer because of these things. So these stories might feel incredibly true, and they're not the full story. I take comfort in that, knowing that it's not the full story, because when we just stick to one side, we're not allowing the fullness to be seen. And that's why I really like the statement of there's two sides to every story. And those roots are incredibly important to how we allow ourselves to see and experience ourselves in the moment, in the spaces in which we operate in life. So we're going to look at something unique today. what capability actually looks like. Capability is showing up whenever you choose to show up, no matter how hard it gets. Going back to the basketball example, you could really struggle with wanting to show up for practice and doing layups because you've missed so many before. Or you can be resilient and choose to try again, and allowing yourself to take the time to look at what is it that I did well and how can I make this better. Too often I find that we seem to allow ourselves to say, I can't do this. I'm not capable. And I'd like to invite people to consider there's something else you can say. How can I? How can I make this work? Because here's the thing. It's not just about having all the answers, and you're not necessarily going to be right by closing yourself down. You may be right in that moment of saying you can't do something because you're right. You can if you choose to. And if you choose to say, I can do it, then you're also right. I believe that's a quote from Henry Ford. But here's the thing. If you take the time to look at your life and reflect, there is so much that you are so capable of. Thinking about all the different life you've lived from the time that you were a child growing up into adulthood. Maybe you're still exploring life as a teen and transitioning to the adult world. No one gets to be unscathed. We all have survived hard seasons. And if you think you haven't survived it, I invite you to consider this truth. If you're alive and breathing, you have survived it. We all get to experience navigating change. Whether it is small or large, like a move, that's a big change. Or maybe you just choose to shift what you're doing for today. You get to navigate that change. Also learning new things. What a gift it is to be able to discover aspects of our world that we didn't know before. That's a lot of capability right there. There's something about acknowledging simple things. Simple things. You got up this morning, you brushed your hair, you put on clothes, you walked out the door. You chose to do something. You even took a moment to take time out of your busy schedule to come listen to this podcast. That's pretty neat. That's a pretty big deal. You know, I've seen and heard different stories of survival from different people groups, like Holocaust survivors or people who didn't have the opportunity to really, they didn't have maybe the easiest upbringing or the ability, and they found a way to move through, to make change. There's one woman I think of in particular. I got to actually meet her in Israel at Yad Vashem. She wrote a book, The Daughter of Many Mothers, and she expresses her life as a little girl going through the Holocaust. So when I mean little, I mean like about 3. And there's these different people that chose to shield her. And then it talks about how she, I think she's 10 or 11, she moves to the U.S. She's adopted out. She learns to read at that age. And then she later becomes a remedial reading teacher. It's pretty amazing, profound. She went through all that. The other person I think of is Alexander Hamilton, and how he began. He was an orphan at a young age, and he came to New York, and he did all the things that he did. That's what capability looks like. They chose it. Before we get into further stuff about confidence and what I'd like us to take a moment to reflect, we're going to look at some quiet evidence of your strength. These are a few questions I have for you. It's an invitation for you to reflect upon what it is you've already accomplished. What's something you've done that your younger self would be proud of? What's something you've done that your younger self would be proud of? What have you gotten through that once felt impossible? What have you gotten through that once felt impossible? I encourage you to start building a personal list of proof. Now, what I love about this is that this doesn't have to be big, grandiose things. This could be things that seemingly simple and mundane. Maybe you're struggling with depression and you got out of bed this morning and you chose to brush your teeth and your hair. For some people, that might be very repulsive, that it's something you avoid. But that's a win for you. That's proof. Maybe you are preparing to run a marathon and you chose to run that 5 miles today. That's proof. Maybe you are working on a gratitude journal every day, and so far you've chosen to start today and you've done today. That's proof. My hope is with these examples that this inspires you to really take a good look at your life and what it is that you can be proud of. And also not to negate and not to neglect the other piece of it, that there's things that you've gone through that you never thought you would be able to see the other side, and you have. So take some time to really write those down. Here's some practical things I'd like to give you as well. One thing that's really present for me is confidence without force. You don't have to necessarily fake it till you make it. I know that people say that, and I've said that before, and I think that it can come across as cliche, but the real value of it is it's just show up. And there are honestly small ways to build your confidence. And I feel like this has a specific flavor of gentleness. I don't really know if you can have a taste of gentleness or if you can really actually taste that, but it sounded good. Here's the list. Take small steps. Rather take small risks. Again, this could be really small, like choosing to wake up 5 minutes earlier. This could be talking to one stranger every day. This could be so many other things. But that's the first one. The second, I think, is incredibly important, and I might get to look at this one closer for myself. Celebrate follow through over perfection. I know for myself it's so easy for me to, especially my past self, like 5 years ago and even a year ago, so much desire to be perfect and to not have flaw. And really, what matters most is that you're being your word. You have integrity because you are building that self-trust. You are cultivating that in yourself through the small decisions, through the small goals that you're creating. And that's incredibly important. Speak to yourself with encouragement, not criticism. How easy is it to speak to ourselves with hitting yourself over the head with a hammer? Maybe it's a mallet. Maybe it's hot pink or whatever color you choose. But when you start changing the way you talk to yourself, and specifically, I mean, you're not using detrimental language, you're talking kindly and supportive and encouraging, it actually supports you. One phrase I heard once at a training was, your heart hears you. Your heart hears you. So how you talk to yourself really influences how you choose to be out in the world, positive or negative. I don't really like speaking in that way because it's just a response to how we talk to ourselves, but I think there's value in that. Let action shape belief. As you choose to take the steps and you take those small risks and you overcome the challenge of completing those, whether it's talking to the stranger, whether it's writing one thing down each and every day that you're grateful for, you're expanding the list, whatever it means, let the proof that you've been tracking and that you've been writing down shape your belief of yourself in a way that is not minimizing what you're already doing, but it's strengthening what's already there that you get to discover. Here's a thought. Maybe you've been capable this whole time. Maybe you've just been waiting for permission you didn't need. You don't need to ask somebody's permission to go for that goal, to start making change. You can choose it today, right now. And I think that's something that can be easily overlooked or forgotten because we're so afraid of how other people are going to perceive us. And at the end of the day, you get to answer to yourself. If you're somebody, a person of faith, you get to answer to God or the Creator. That's something I think you should think about. Maybe you've been capable this whole time. Maybe you've just been waiting for permission you didn't need. So go ahead and take hold of that and choose your next step. One of my biggest things, you don't have to feel ready to begin. You just have to begin. And the rest will rise to meet you. You got this. I am so proud of you. Not that you need validation from me. Sometimes it's just nice to have an encouraging word from someone. Even if it's a perfect stranger, or perhaps we know each other. My hope is that this episode has invited you to consider that you are capable and there is much you have to offer. So whether it is morning, afternoon, or night, my hope is you've connected with this in a way that is encouraging and it's empowered you to move forward into whatever's next for you. As we close out this podcast, my hope is that if this has helped you, you like, comment, subscribe, and share this with somebody who is in need of this. Thanks for listening. Really, thanks for being here. You could be anywhere, and you chose to be here. This is Lily, and this is Affirming Self. Until next time.